All right, folks, welcome back. I hope everyone had a good lunch break. Hope appointments went well, meetings went well, all the things. All right, so just a friendly reminder of our plan. We're going to go through these last three courts that we wanted to review from yesterday, that we had set aside from yesterday. And then we will hear public comment. And then depending on how long everything takes, we might need a little bit of a break just so that staff can get you the appropriate numbers. And then we'll present to that and make sure that that is the consensus. And then you'll be free to go. So before we get too deep into this, I want to apologize for a misspeak that I gave you last time. I had said that we needed to review Union Mental Health Court. I misspoke. So you all had reached a consensus on Union Mental Health Court. So we just have 3 adult drug courts to do a quick review of, starting with Clatsop, who is on your screen now, or should be. So a friendly reminder, just a quick review of Clatsop. Their average participation was 16. Their completion rate was 43%, and their spending was at 81%. Some staff recommendations on this court were that the second probation deputy that they requested be cut, as staff felt that there wasn't large enough participation numbers to justify the second position. And then that was the only reduction made. The only other ones were the training and travel reduced to that $12,000 cap, and then the admin being reduced to that 10%, and everything else was reduced via their prioritization sheet.
So Adeline, remind me on for personnel, what is a sufficient explanation for the time with the treatment court?
So unless there was additional justification in their narrative, we matched the FTE to their average participation. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, and so on any of these that are in the personnel, you look at the number of participants that's in the court, and then an average for those participants, how many would be required?
Right. Unless there was justification for why it might be over, or if they were doing other jobs, or, we looked at their narratives as well.
And how does that work? Like, does it matter if it's under personnel or contractual?
No, so well, kind of. So the contractual, both, regardless of what category it was in, we needed to see some sort of breakdown. So personnel, the breakdown was often to FTE. That was the easiest straight across way to do it. For contractual, again, we needed some sort of breakdown, but it might not, depending on what they were asking, it might not be by FTE. It might have been by participant number. It might have, depending on what they were asking for. So at this point, and let me know if you need more time, but we're wondering if there's any additional recommendations for Clatsop ADC, or if you want to continue with staff recommendations.
I have a note under the behavior health, under the contractual. And that's 168. Does it explain under the contractual what justifies that? How do you check the math on that?
Let me see. So you're asking how we if we checked the math on in the contractual category.
Right, did they explain enough about what the purpose of Clatsop Behavior Healthcare is for? What we're paying for as it's related to treatment court and not billable by insurance?
Staff felt they did, but if the GRC feels otherwise, you can absolutely make a reduction or a recommendation, pardon me. I know that for our staff methodology was if we felt there wasn't enough information, we made a reduction of 20%. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
So I guess I'm not certain if that answered the judge's question. At least I'm not certain it did. I could be wrong, but the explanation that's provided is saying that it's going to fund dedicated CDC to provide substance abuse treatment assessments and recovery support for drug court participants, improving access, engagement, and continuity of care. And what was the average again of how many people they served?
They have an average of 16.
Yeah,
Connie, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, it's one of those things where it's a billable service. So based on what they've described, those are all billable services. So it doesn't separate out, or doesn't appear to at least separate out what they're billing and what they're not billing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So I don't know how you recommend a cut to that when it just is, yeah, I think the process we used prior before may have been more helpful, at least for me, in some of these decisions. So,
Connie, do you want to add something?
Oh, actually, it was the exact same thing. They listed it as a CADC for substance use treatment, and that's a billable service. So I don't know how they could justify requesting $160,000 to cover that.
Okay, so does the GRC want to make a recommendation?
I understand what Joe's saying. It makes it hard, like to say we're going to cut something by 80% when we don't know if the full amount is even justifiable. So how do we handle that? I assume, I'm making assumptions that some of that is not billable to insurance, but I don't know which portion.
Right. So just to clarify, it would be reducing it to 80%, not by 80%, if you were following staff methodology that we've done thus far. But if you have an additional, I hear what you're saying, but so you can use that methodology that exists, or if you have a different recommendation, that works as well. Annie, go ahead.
The number it looks like they requested is also based on a participant number of 25. Am I reading on the far right? It says that. And then I do also note that this seems to be aimed at the participants who are at community corrections. So that seems like a high number for them to have in community corrections. And also support what everyone else is saying. And so I guess I might propose to reduce it to the number of, at least to reduce it to the number of participants or average participants, which would be 16. And then see what that is. And we could also talk about if we wanted to do an 80%, which all seems also like a big change, but I think that's another option for us to look at.
Okay, so we'll start with that. So you're proposing the recommendation of reducing it down based on their average participation. So from 25 to 16?
Yes.
Okay. And how does the rest of the GRC feel about that?
I feel like this is, what's it called, supplanting? Is that what it's called when a position's already funded in some way and then it's being, like, if they get those funds, then that money could be used elsewhere. I just feel like it's not reasonable for billable services to be doubled like that.
That is the correct term.
So
I'm sorry, what's
maybe-
the correct term?
No, that is,
It
it's the
is. Okay,
supplanting
thank
issue
you.
that we've historically, we've historically always had to address, in funding just because of a variety of reasons when it comes to these, application reviews. So, but yeah, supplanting is historically the language we've used.
Thank you.
So Annie raises a good point regarding community, or they're in custody, right? Is that what that means at community corrections? So is that's not what that means?
That was my reading of it, is if someone is at community corrections, but I think there are other experts that probably know that more than I do.
Does anybody want to chime in? Because it might make it, I don't know if it matters if they're in corrections, if they're able to get, if that causes them to lose insurance. I don't know, but you guys go, you're smarter than me on this.
Community corrections is referring to parole and probation. Corrections is referring to in custody generally. So, when I read it, I assumed that they had an A&D person providing service within their community corrections department, which, some places have. For example, I have my sex offender provider, provide service within my office, and I provide dedicated space for them to provide that service. I know some other folks, do that with A&D. So, so that's how I was taking it. If it was just corrections, then to me, that would mean in custody. They're providing service within custody, setting. So either assessments or actual treatment. We have that as well. It's a separate program. I don't think we asked for funding in these grants, but, it's called RSAT. And so that's not a billable service. So if they were to word it that way, it would be more identifiable, but I assume this meant that they just have an A&D person embedded within their parole and probation department who provides service there on site.
Thanks, Joe. That was a great explanation.
I feel like I learn something every time I interact with the GRC. So just to fill in kind of a couple additional pieces here. So if you were to make the reduction just based on participants, it would bring it down to 64%. Now that was just reducing from that 100% as is. That's not considering if you wanted to do the 20% reduction following that methodology if there wasn't enough information. So to give you all some numbers, cutting it by the 20% would bring it down to $134,400. If you were to reduce it by the number of participants, so to that 64%, it would bring it to $107,520.
I agree with Annie's suggestion to reduce it down based on the number of participants.
Okay, so we have 2 for that. How's the rest of the GRC feeling?
I do not support funding the contractual employee when it could be utilized through another program and insurance could be billed.
Okay.
Joe, can you educate us a little bit more on that piece? Would they be providing, do they have the ability to do that through another entity where insurance could be billed?
How I will just say how I'm interpreting this. I think if you're embedding an A&D provider within the community corrections department on site is actually a really good thing. Just because every time we're requesting any of our folks to show up to our office, just like it's not to the level of court, obviously, but just that kind of relationship generally produces a better response from our clients to a peer. And so there is some advantages, to doing that. I think the challenge with this is when it's not explained and broken out in a way that justifies, that says, this is what it costs for uninsured folks to provide this service, or here's what the additional expense is to provide this service, then we get into this weird territory of us trying to sort that out of what's billable and what's not. And I think that's the challenging part about this without being able to ask is we have to make judgment calls based on whatever is included and not. So I guess one of the questions I have is because what they've identified, a number of it is billable services, is if there is a reduction, are they able to come back in the supplemental round and clarify with their numbers and their explanation as to why that original ask was made?
So they would be able to, I don't know if it technically would be clarify, but they could request a set amount of money and then utilize hopefully this feedback and this information to make that supplemental request. So in theory, if they came back and they wanted the supplemental funding, they could acknowledge like, hey, this is what we're doing, and hopefully separate is what I'm trying to say, those billable and unbillable services.
Okay.
Connie, go
So
ahead.
it states in there that these services are being provided by Clatsop Behavioral Health, which means it's a CADC through their behavioral health program. So I am willing to bet that the county is already billing insurance for that.
So I do want to remind folks about the options that have been come up so far, right? So we have the staff recommendation. Doesn't sound like we want to continue with that. There is the recommendation to do a 20% reduction based on really not knowing. And then there is the recommendation as well on the table to do a reduction based on average participation. So instead of those 25 participants they listed, doing it to 16 participants. Those are all based on methodologies that you all have recommended thus far. That's using the staff recommendations. Those are kind of all what has been done in previous situations as well, or along the lines of that. Yeah, please, Judge, Your Honor.
I'm wondering if this would help Connie and Joe out, and I'd love to hear from Jake, but he just disappeared. So what if we reduce the number of participants? So we have the 107,000, and then we did the 20% reduction for failure to explain, rather than eliminate the whole thing.
Can I make one small suggestion to that? If you're following the methodologies that we use, it would go the opposite of that. So you do the 20% reduction first, and then you would cut down to participants.
Could you calculate that?
The brains behind the computer will. So if you if you give us just a moment, yes, it will be calculated. Also, I don't know if this is helpful. I think Joe did a nice job of explaining it, but while we are waiting for the numbers, I did one of the folks on the team added the definition of supplanting per the grant administration guide. So it says funds must be used to supplement existing funds and not replace or supplant funds that have been appropriated for the same purpose. Grant funds may not be used to pay for program activities that the grant recipient is already obligated to pay or has already funded. So again, I think that mirrors how Joe described it, but that is how it's written in the grant administration guide. Also, the final number, so with that 20% cut and then the additional cut down to participation, or that average participation would bring it down to $86,016. So is that the recommendation that the group wants to go with? Is that what we have, at least majority, going for? I have 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up, 3 thumbs up, and I think a 4th. All right. So we figured that out for contractual. Do we have any other recommendations for Clatsop ADC? All right. Hearing nothing else, our next one is going to be Multnomah Start Court. So just a reminder on their numbers. So they have an average participation of 105. They have a 52% completion rate and are at a 58% spending at the end of Q7. Again, I'm going to go 1 slide over here and I'll just remind you of the staff recommendations. We recommended cutting both legal assistant positions as it was not explained as contributing directly to program operations and or directly assisting participants. We also recommended fully cutting the participant supports and peer mentor services and the mileage in peer mentor services. The cut to the participant supports was as the position was not explained, and it appeared to be double dipping, not double dipping of services, but it appeared to be already being done by a different funded category. And then the mileage for peer mentor services was cut because it's an unallowable. So we can't use grant funds to pay for mileage beyond training and travel. So they were hoping for funds to drive between participants. Unfortunately, grant funds can't be used for that. The rest of the reductions that you see here, beyond what I just mentioned, were based on utilizing their prioritization sheet.
So, what is the cap percent for their lack of spending?
So you're saying because of the 58%, what percentage are they getting back? I
Yes.
believe it is 90%, but let me double check that. I don't want to misspeak. Let's bring it back real quick. So they're at 52%. So yeah, they would be right at that 90% mark.
And they weren't reduced at all for failure to state their reasoning or do their math?
Not that staff noted, but if the GRC feels that there isn't enough information, those are recommendations that you absolutely could make.
And similar to Benton County, where we wouldn't we wouldn't provide funding for something that wasn't in a contract, do the same rules apply?
Yeah, we would want to be consistent.
So it appears that they're peer, even though we love peer mentor services, that I think it says that it's to be determined. They're in a procurement process, but they're not in contract.
Yes, and I just want to note that staff recommended not funding peer mentor supports. So that was already reduced fully.
And it'd be the same thing for the 112,000 for peer mentor services.
I think so. Let me just double check here. Oh, and I have an additional note here. My apologies. So they do not have to be in a contract to get funding if they are in the procurement process. Benton County was not, which was the issue. Yeah, Connie, go ahead.
I'm just trying to figure out what the pre-engagement is. I'm looking through and not finding that correlating in my notes.
Let me just pull up their line items real quick. It was the second one under contractual.
And I'm sorry, Adeline, remind me so I'm still on what Connie's talking about, the
Mhm.
pre-engagement, it was reduced to 94%. Remind me why that was?
That was due to their prioritization sheet. So following their prioritization.
So is that sufficient? If I'm looking at that one, for example, non-billable services per current provider, is that a sufficient explanation for contract services for 2 and 3 for a total of $200,000?
That is up to you all. So staff felt that we had enough information to make the recommendation. If you disagree and you would like to make a recommendation otherwise, you are more than welcome to. Also, let me know if you want me to go back to the overall at any point. Oh, Jake, I'm so sorry. I didn't see your hand. Please.
You know, as I look at this and I think back through all of Multnomah County's grant applications, we got 0 responses back from them. So I'm struggling with, every county had some responses. There was Multnomah County and maybe one other county that didn't formulate any responses to our initial concerns or our initial points to ponder. And I struggle with that. So I'm not sure why. I'm not going to be in favor of supporting any increases to their budgets when they can't do some additional work to help us figure out how they're going to address the points that we provided for them to ponder. I'm not in favor of that. That strikes a chord with me when there's 55 courts and just about every county represented in that, and everybody can do that.
Sure. So with that though, are you wanting to, hearing you, are there additional reductions or additional recommendations beyond what we have, or do you want to stick with staff? And while you think about that, please, Connie, I think you were going to say something in response to Jake.
Oh, I was going to recommend that the pre-engagement be brought down to 80%. I don't feel like they justify it in the narrative. And like Jay said, they had the opportunity to respond and chose not to.
Okay. So that pre-engagement, you're gonna suggest that line item be reduced by the 20% for lack of information, consistent with previous staff methodology. All right, is that the consensus from the GRC?
I agree, and I think it's similar with their other contractual services.
So do you have further recommendation to, I guess, any other line items then? Did you feel that way for all the line items in the contractual services? Or do you want to stick with the staff recommendations plus that additional recommendation that Connie just introduced?
So I agree with Connie and I agree with Jake in regards to the lack of response and and to align it with best practices, as well as the lack of the narrative or explanation on how they got to their numbers. So I would say at least, I mean, if not, we haven't looked at the personnel, but the contractual is 356,392. There, it would seem appropriate that they would be at 80% for the contractual.
Okay, so I just do want to clarify. So the way that staff and that kind of based on your acceptance of staff recommendation on most thus far, we did reductions. If we were doing that 20% reduction, it was based on line item. So what I'm hearing, and I want to give you all time to kind of do a brief review of contractual services. What I'm hearing you say is that you want to accept the staff recommendations of what we have reduced in the sense of taking out that peer mentor support and that peer mentor mileage, and then all the other line items in contractual services. And again, making sure that we're doing a reread and making sure that we're looking at information. The rest of those you would like reduced by that 20% due to lack of information.
I'm going to suggest we all do look at the contractual services and see what other people think. So yes.
Yeah, please let's definitely make sure that we're reviewing. Take a chance, take your time to do that. And then go ahead, Connie.
Oh, when you say reduce to 80%, are you saying on the intake one actually increase it to 80% or leave it at 50?
Oh, no, that's a good point, Connie. Thank you. No, I'm saying on the you'll have to remind me, Adeline, why it was reduced to 50%, but I'm saying the pre-engagement, take that to 80%, and then looking at the contractual services. The second one is treatment services. Yeah, that's pre-engagement, and then treatment services, court participation, court staff and policy meetings, $155,000, that would be taken to 80%. And then peer mentor services to 80%.
And the intake was reduced to 50% based on their prioritization sheet.
Well, then maybe take that one to 80% and see, I mean, because if it takes it down, if that was adjusted based on their cap and it wouldn't be fair to keep them at 50%, then move that one to 80%.
Correct. If you would like, go ahead and if you're comfortable with this, go ahead and do your review. Just make sure that everyone's on board with that from the GRC. And while you do that, we can have the big brains behind the scenes here give you what those total contractual services would come to, if that works.
I just do want to point out that in their column C, the description of services, they do put a little more information. I had been focusing mostly on their narrative, but the description of services does provide a little bit more information that might be helpful.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, we're leaving the peer mentor services, we're taking out the peer mentor service participant support, correct? Because those are
First-
two different.
That was per staff recommendation. If you're holding to staff recommendation, yes.
Adeline, I do want to be consistent with the courts across the board. Were we expecting there to be a breakdown of how they spent their time, like treatment would, like for you to do the math, don't you need to know? Or didn't we require in the others that like this is the amount of hours they spend and this is how much time goes to like pre-court staffing, trainings and meetings and all those things?
Yeah, it was either it was broken down, it was very clear how they broke down their numbers using those formulas, or if that wasn't super clear, it was explained further in the narrative. So between using the whole line item, if we couldn't break down how they got to the use of their numbers, then we were saying that 20% reduction based on not being able to get to an answer. And that's been consistent across all court types.
So my question would be, can somebody, if I'm missing that formula or that explanation, can somebody point that out to me?
I'm sorry, Judge, you were asking for clarification of the breakdown. I feel like I'm not clear what your question was there.
Yeah, thank you, Connie. I'm saying the reason, like, if we're gonna reduce it to 80% to be consistent, how we've done with the other programs, is that we have to point to some formula to tell us how much time that person is spending there and how they can, their cost and how we come up with that dollar amount. And I'm reminded of when we were talking about, like, I think peer mentors somewhere, that there was, even when we looked at the breakdown of what they put in the numbers, that was not enough justification, that we wanted it in the narrative, and I just can't find it. And if I'm missing it, I want to be corrected.
So far, what I have heard from you all, and I just want to be really clear, is for your following staff recommendations for not funding the peer mentor services participant supports and the peer mentor services mileage. And then the rest, you want to follow that staff methodology that you're going to reduce it by 20% due to that lack of clarity and lack of additional information that kind of showed where they got those numbers. Is that what I'm hearing? Is that a fair
Yes.
summary?
On the
On the contractual services, yes. Thank you, Connie. Is that the consensus from the GRC, or is that from the majority of the GRC? Or want to make sure we get at least contractual services and that we can move on if we need to. So is that, if I can get a thumbs up or a nod or a. Thanks, Joe. We got a thumbs up. All right, we'll take silence as consensus. Oh, we have more thumbs up. Perfect. All right, so with that recommended change to contractual services, do we have any other recommendations for Multnomah Star Court?
just to clarify, the personnel was where the legal assistant came from, right? Removed.
Yes, exactly. Let me go back to that slide for you. So we recommended the removal of the legal assistant and the alternate legal assistant.
Okay, great, thank you.
Of course. All right. So any other recommendations for Stark Court?
So on the personnel, is there, remind me, Adeline, we don't do the same thing with the personnel, right?
So personnel, we typically, when reductions have been made thus far, it has been done by FTE, typically.
And so staff has looked at the number of participants,
Mhm.
which is what?
Let's go back 105. Is
So
our average
105. And then you look at that and you determine, okay, does that justify the FTEs that are on here?
Right, exactly. And staff looking at it felt like it was justified, but of course, I do invite you to take a second look as the GRC.
And it's one PO and it's a half of a defense attorney and it's 0.32 of a DDA, correct?
Let me double check here, but that is sounding correct. Yes, that's correct. Any additional recommendations for Multnomah Stark? All right, I'm not hearing anything.
Judge, it looks like you're still looking at stuff. Do you need more time?
No, I think I'm okay. I think we're good.
All right. Now this next one, we did a little review of the recording for Multnomah Step Court, which I will tell you is, at least for me, one of the most horrible things is to have to review yourself talking. But we did it for you. And this one, Annie had recommended the staff recommendations. And then there were some questions around the scaled cap and all that. So we said, hey, let's take a break and we'll come back. We did confirm that these caps are correct as due to their spending and all their participant numbers. Basically, what the numbers on the screen are correct. We did double check that. However, I don't know if you want to. So you all had approved it and then had some questions about the cap. I don't know if you want to review it now because it wasn't officially confirmed, or if you want to go forth with the knowledge that we did double check those numbers. That is up to you all. And if you do want to review it, I can give you the additional information, a reminder at least about their participation and all that good stuff. I'm seeing Connie shaking her head that she's happy with the staff recommendation. I'm gonna assume this is the same unless anyone needs extra time. All right. Hey, y'all, great work. That is all the courts. So with that, let me get to my fun you did it slide. So what we would do typically is we would open it up to public comment now. I am going to ask my colleagues if we had any written public comment. There is no written public comment. So then in that case, we will open it up now. A friendly reminder again, if anyone in the public would like to do public comment, let me stop sharing here actually for a minute. Stop presenting, then I can see if people want to turn on their screens if they want to do public comment. And then a friendly reminder again, public comment needs to be comments. It can't be questions. So if there are questions, we are not able to answer them. And when I say we, that means both TJC staff and the GRC. Now, if you do, or if you are interested in doing public comment, please try and keep your comments to no more than 2 minutes. And yeah, we'll open up the floor, and maybe just if you are able and you're going to be zooming in or using Teams, if you can turn on your screen, and that way it will let us know who would like to make public comment, if there is any.
Quick question real quick.
Sure.
After public comments, will you let us know if we were able to get it down to the required, I know it was like 4.2 million over. Will you let us know, are we at budget now?
Oh, so you are over budget. So that if you would have gone with the staff recommendations as they were, it would have been a little over 250,000 that using staff had already made that 4.2 in cuts. And then we had a little bit of wiggle room in that 251,000. But yes, to answer your questions, I will of course get you final numbers. Typically what is done is we'll go through public comment and then we'll take a quick 20-minute break. And that just allows staff time to double check our numbers. And then I will come back with that final number and we will just get the consensus that that is what you want sent to the commission. And then you're free for the rest of the afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I'm free or I have to go back to work.
Hey, if you need to say this lasted all day, Judge, they'll only know if they check the YouTube channel. Which, friendly reminder for everyone watching, these are recorded public meetings and they are placed on the CJC YouTube channel. So if, as you're going through and you want to go back and look, if you want to review GRC feedback or you want to review staff recommendations, you can just find your court during that meeting link that'll be available on YouTube within 2 days. So it's a quick turnaround. All right. I am not seeing any screens turn on. I am not seeing any hands raised or anything that is making me believe that there is public comment. So with that, I think if we can, let's plan on a 15-minute break. So can we come back at, I'm terrible at math, 2:10, I believe would be right. Okay. Please take a break and we will return with those final numbers and to get a consensus. Oh, and I misspoke. They have to be on YouTube in 7 days. I'm just used to our staff. They're so quick. They're so fast within 7 days. All right. Well, we will see you all back here at 2:10. Hi, everyone. No rush back. We unfortunately are experiencing a little bit of technical difficulties over here. Excel is not being the most cooperative with us. So we're going to need an additional 10 minutes. So we're going to come back now at 2:20. We just want to make sure that everything is right. So take an extra 10 minutes. We'll be back. All right, folks, welcome back. Thanks for that additional time to make sure that we had these numbers correct for you. Unfortunately, Kelsey did have to leave. She had an appointment in court, but I believe that we still have quorum as long as Jake and Judge Kitson-McCaddish return. So then we should be good to go. All right, so we did the math. And here is the recommendation. So these are, this slide may look vaguely familiar, right? So we had the available funds of a little over 16 million, a little over 19 million was requested. So the new recommended funding per staff recommendations and then GRC recommendations was at $15,600,233.92. I do want to note, technically speaking, it is up to that amount. We think that is absolutely correct, but we do want to just say up to in the case there's any tiny admin adjustments that we have to do. The cumulative reductions came out to almost 4 million, and that leaves a remainder of $588,862.08. So the way that we currently have it set, the current plan per our previous discussion was that we will fund the courts, or we will send the recommendation to fund the courts as we've discussed throughout the last 2 days. And then that additional remainder will be held to be used as supplemental funding down into the 25-27 biennium. Is that does anyone have any objections to that? Will be our first question. Is that what the GRC is going to recommend to the commission? I'm seeing thumbs up. I'm seeing head nods. Excellent. All right. So officially, since I have enough of you for a quorum, all we have to do, you don't have to make an official vote. I just have to get your consensus. So I think the easiest way to do that is I'm just going to ask, do we have any objections to everything that has been stated here? So the recommended funding and then holding that remainder for the supplemental round. Just double checking any objections. All right. Then, with a lack of any objection, we are going to consider this consensus from the GRC. And we will bring this to the commission. Now, if anyone watching, including our GRC members, if you'd like to see this on the commission, see how the commission feels about your recommendations, the meeting is on August 19th at 1 o'clock. You can find the link to the commission meeting if you'd like to watch it. It's virtual. It will be on the CJC website at our calendar. Other than that, I just want to, again, thank you all so much for all your time. This is a long 2 days or day and a half, whatever we're at. I really appreciate all your attention, your engagement, and especially just all of the information that you come and all that detail. So thank you for being here. Jake, yes, please share.
Just for food for thought for the future. One thing I really struggled with was, but I know we can't foresee how much we're going to need to spend, or how much we're going to need for the biennium for our programs. But when we have anywhere from 7% to 30 to 50% spending after 2 years, I struggle with giving them the same or more money than we did last biennium, because that's money, 50%, 7%, that's 93%. That's a lot of money that we're giving back to the general fund that we that's destined for programs. So I don't know how we can look at that, and if there's even a way to try and restructure our funding processes, use it or lose it kind of stuff. I don't know. That's one thing I've struggled with the last couple bienniums when we do the grant reviews, is how much was spent in the previous biennium versus how much we're now giving them back. So for the future
Yeah.
2 years. And I know the world fluctuates and it's like a
Sure.
roller coaster. I get that. But this is dedicated funding that isn't going anywhere other than our programs. And it's
Yeah,
a
and
use it or lose it.
I just want to add kind of on that note, that is why I just want to note that you are definitely not the first person to have this suggestion. That is why we tried to do the scaled caps based on spending. That was part of that thought process. I also think, again, just kind of going over what will be new for, to my understanding, all CJC grants going forward, is that we will have that clause in the contracts that say if you haven't spent at least 60% of your funds by Q7, then we'll hold that final disbursement and it won't be dispersed until you get to that spending level. I think that kind of speaks to that change as well. But yes, you are heard. This is something we've heard from lots of different people throughout different parts of the treatment courts, and something we're definitely aware of and working on as best we can.
Other than that, I appreciate the work you and your team have done to prepare us for the last couple of days. That's a big ask and a lot of weight to carry, and you guys did it. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yeah, shout out to the people behind the screen that you're not seeing, because truly could not do it without a very small but mighty team. Your Honor, please.
Yeah, along with what Jake was saying, and Adeline, maybe it's for a conversation at another time, but is it possible that to save those funds, that if at that point you don't release the final disbursement, do people have an opportunity to request at some point money that has been awarded but not used?
No, they don't. So unfortunately, that is just how the funding structure is, that once the funds are returned, so we have to wait until the end of the project period, and once they are returned at the end of the project period, they go back to the state of Oregon. They are not held for future use in the treatment court program. So that is why we really, I feel like, if there are any grantees still or applicants still watching, if you're a current grantee, you've heard me harp and harp and harp on spending. That is why, because once the money is gone at the end of the project period, it's gone. So it doesn't come back to, at least gone from treatment courts. It does go back to the state of Oregon. So.
All right. And then before we leave, because well, first of all, thank you, Adeline. And everybody there, you guys did an amazing job. This was a heavy lift. I don't know about the other GRC members but I know I was spending the weekends trying to get up to pace. It was so voluminous, voluminous, however you say that, in regards to the reading and keeping track. And so, Jake, the fact and Joe, that you've done this for a long, long time, what dedicated individuals, because it's a huge, huge lift. And I started, and maybe this is I know everybody probably wants to go, but I started making a list of reasons for reductions. Do you make a list like that, Adeline, for us for in the future or for grantees?
Yeah, so we have a list. I'm happy to send it over. We do have our methodologies that we utilize to make these recommended reductions. It is in fact, it was actually here. I can pull it on up. It was in this presentation as well. And it will also be recommended to, or it will be presented with your recommendations to the commission. So they'll have an idea of kind of how we got to the numbers we got to. Sorry, when you have 190 slides, it takes forever to get through them. Here we go. So these there's a couple of them. So right, this was the reminder of the budget breakdown and how we went through that. And then kind of a little more guidance around the scaled caps. And then this one will have gone through those additional staff reductions. So these will be provided. And if you would like, if the GRC members would like, and you'd like me to send this presentation to you, I'm more than happy to do so if that's helpful.
Yes, I would like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to send it over. All right. Well, it's 2:30. Unless there is any other questions, any other comments, anything else we need to know, we will say goodbye for now. And then again, if you want to watch that commission meeting, it's August 19th. For any applicants who are still watching, that is when the commission meeting on August 19th is when the official decisions will be made. So while these recommendations are being brought to the commission, they get the final say. So nothing is set in stone yet officially. All right. Well, again, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank
you.
All
you.
right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.